If you ever wake up with the feeling that someone has been watching you, really watching you, don't ignore it. Don't brush it off as a bad dream or a moment of paranoia. Don't tell yourself it was the house settling or the pipes contracting in the cold. Sometimes the feeling is the only warning you get. And sometimes, like in my case, it comes far too late. My name is Carter Hill, and for most of my life, I thought I was the kind of man who couldn't be frightened easily. I grew up in an old house that creaked like it was constantly breathing, worked night shifts for a decade, lived alone, watched every horror movie people said would ruin me. Nothing ever stuck. Nothing ever sank its teeth into me. But that changed the night I found something on my doorstep that shouldn't have existed. A black VHS tape. No case, no note, just the tape. And across the spine, written in ink that had bled from water or sweat or shaking hands, were the words, "Recording number 0." That was it. No date, no explanation, no label about who filmed it or who it belonged to. Just recording number 0. And the moment I saw it, something in my body reacted before my brain did, a jolt of cold, like someone breathing the word "run" directly into my ear. I stood on my porch for almost a full minute, looking up and down my quiet suburban street, every house dark, every driveway empty, no movement, no sign that anyone had been there. Still, I picked it up. I don't know why. Curiosity, instinct, stupidity. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered if I'd left it. Maybe things were already in motion long before the tape ever touched my hands. Inside, I tossed the tape on the kitchen counter and tried to shrug it off. Maybe someone left it by mistake. Maybe a neighbor dropped it. Maybe it was a dumb prank. But the more I looked at it, the heavier it felt. Not physically. Something else. Like whatever was inside that plastic shell was waiting for me to notice it, to acknowledge it, to press play. The problem was, I didn't own a VCR. I had thrown mine out years ago after digitizing all my old home movies and deciding I didn't need the bulky machine taking up closet space. But I did still have one in the basement, buried under a stack of Halloween decorations and broken power tools. It barely worked the last time I used it. I should have left it buried. But again, curiosity is a kind of sickness. A little after 2 a.m., I went down the basement stairs, pulled the dusty VCR out, and carried it back up to the living room. I had to smack it a few times before the power even turned on. The blue display flickered like it was possessed by a dying firefly, but it worked. The TV hissed, static, the moment I connected it. Maybe that was my second warning. I don't know why I didn't stop. I don't know why I slid the tape in, sat down on the couch, and grabbed the remote with hands that were already shaking. When I pressed play, the screen went black for a moment. Then, the recording started. At first, I thought it was nothing, just darkness. Grainy and distorted, the low hum of a microphone picking up dead air. I leaned forward, squinting, waiting for something to come into view. Then the camera adjusted. The shadows shifted. Shadows gave way to a dim shape, then to a clearer outline, and then I realized what the camera was pointing at. A bed. My bed. My room. And someone, no, something, was filming from behind the wall, inside the wall. The shot was from an impossible angle, like the camera was positioned in a space that didn't exist between the studs and insulation. And there I was, lying in the bed, asleep. I froze. My heartbeat hammered so hard it drowned out the sound from the TV. My mouth went dry. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. It was me. Sleeping. Recorded from inside the walls. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to convince myself it was fake, CGI, a prank, some elaborate digital trick. But it wasn't. I recognized the details too well: the chipped paint on the headboard, the crooked picture frame above the nightstand, the small tear in the pillowcase I kept forgetting to throw out. It was my room. It was me. It was real. The camera didn't move. It didn't zoom. It didn't sway. It didn't even breathe. It just watched me sleeping for what felt like forever. I don't know how long I stared at the recording, maybe a minute, maybe 10. My pulse was pounding in my neck. I felt cold, like the room itself was rejecting me. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting something to be standing behind me. Then, the tape cut to static. The screen crackled, lines flickering across the image like lightning underwater. I exhaled a shaky breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. But the tape wasn't done. The picture snapped back. This time, the camera angle was closer, much closer, too close. It was filming me again, but now the shot was from directly above the bed, like the camera was floating inches from my face. My sleeping body twitched lightly, unaware of the lens hovering over me like a predator. And then, my eyes opened. Not on the couch, not in the living room, not in real time. On the tape. The version of me on the screen opened his eyes wide, staring directly into the camera, directly at me, like he knew I'd be watching, like he knew when I'd press play, like he was waiting. I flinched so hard I nearly fell off the couch. My heart lodged itself in my throat. On the tape, my recorded self didn't look confused or tired or surprised. He wasn't waking up from sleep. He woke up into the camera, into me, into awareness. And then he spoke. Not with a whisper, not with panic, but calmly. Too calmly. He said, "If you're watching this, you're not alone." I reached for the remote immediately, fingers scrambling over the buttons. I hit stop. The screen froze. I ripped the tape out of the VCR with one hard yank. The machine whined, but released it. The TV went blue. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the tape clutched in my hand like it was a live snake. Not alone. What the hell did that mean? I turned around slowly, scanning every corner of the living room, every doorway, every shadow, listening. The house was silent, but something felt wrong, heavy, like the air shifted after hearing itself spoken about. I swallowed hard and looked at the tape again. I wanted to smash it, burn it, throw it out the window, but I couldn't move. Then the lights flickered. Every bulb in the house dimmed for half a second, then snapped back to full brightness. I jumped. The tape nearly slipped from my hand. The thermostat clicked on. The refrigerator hummed to life. A car drove by outside, and life went on. Like nothing had happened. I went to bed around 5:30 a.m. after sitting awake all night, checking over my shoulder every few minutes. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Not after seeing myself on a tape that shouldn't exist, filmed from angles that couldn't exist. But exhaustion won eventually. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling until everything blurred into white noise. When I finally drifted off, it wasn't peaceful. I woke up 2 hours later to a sound that didn't belong in my house. a faint clicking, rhythmic, slow, mechanical, like a camera shutter, coming from the inside of the wall behind my head. I froze. The noise clicked again. Then again. And again. Soft, precise, deliberate, right inside the wall. Like something was there, like something had been there, like something never left. I pressed my ear to the wall, shaking so badly I could barely keep still. Click. 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 And then a faint whisper. Not words, not breath, just presence. Something exhaled on the other side of the wall. I stumbled away from the bed, heart rattling against my ribs. My hands were trembling uncontrollably. The clicking stopped, but the space behind the wall felt alive, as if something inside had moved, shifted its weight, adjusted itself, like it knew I was awake, like it was listening to me. I ran out of the room so fast I slammed into the doorframe. My shoulder exploded with pain, but I didn't stop. I sprinted down the hall, grabbed my keys, and bolted out the front door into the early morning air. I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes, shaking. My phone lay in the passenger seat. I almost called the police, almost called a friend, almost called someone, anyone. But what would I say? There's something inside my walls. I found a tape of myself sleeping, filmed from inside the drywall. The recording version of me told me I'm not alone. They'd think I was joking, or hallucinating, or dangerous. So I drove. I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove until the sun came up, until my breathing steadied, until my pulse stopped scraping the inside of my throat. It was only when I pulled into an empty diner parking lot on the edge of town that I realized something was missing. The tape. I checked the passenger seat, the floor, the back seat. Nothing. I'd left it in the house. I groaned, pressing the heels of my hands into my eyes. But then, I paused. Slowly, I lifted my head. On the dashboard, perfectly centered and impossible to miss, was a piece of masking tape. I hadn't seen it when I got in the car. I was sure of that. My hands shook as I peeled it off the dashboard. Written in the same off-kilter handwriting from the VHS spine were 3 words. Recording number 1, ready. And underneath, in smaller letters, look behind you. I didn't move. Not at first. Not for a long, breathless moment where reality stretched thin and fragile around me. Then, the back seat creaked. Lightly. Slowly. As if someone, or something, had just leaned forward. I didn't dare to turn around. I didn't breathe. The air behind me felt colder, denser, like something was occupying it, like the space itself bent around whatever waited there. And in the mirror, barely visible, barely formed, was a shape shifted. Not human, not entirely, but wearing my outline. Watching me, breathing with me, waiting. The tape was only the beginning, and every second I stayed alive meant I was running out of time, because whatever was behind me wasn't done filming. I didn't turn around. I couldn't.
Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, to escape, to fling the door open and sprint until my lungs gave out. But something deeper, something primal, told me not to move. Not yet. Not while the thing behind me was so close that I could feel the pressure of its presence bending the air toward my neck. My eyes stayed locked on the rearview mirror. The silhouette, my silhouette, sat perfectly still in the back seat. No details, no face, no features, just the shape of a man who shouldn't be there. The shape of me. A shadow wearing my outline, as if someone had drawn my body in wet ink and let it drip into the darkness. The diner behind us was still closed. The sun was still low in the sky. The parking lot was empty. There was no one to help me. No one to see what sat inches behind my seat. The figure tilted its head slightly, like a curious animal. My throat tightened. That movement wasn't human. It wasn't curious. It was analyzing, measuring, deciding. I didn't know if it could speak. I didn't know if it could touch me. I didn't know what it wanted. But I knew it was waiting for something. Very slowly, so slowly I felt my muscles cramping. I reached toward the door handle. The shadow in the back seat moved. Just a twitch. Barely a shift, but enough to freeze me solid. Then, a sound. Not from the back seat. From my pocket. A faint click. Mechanical. Rhythmic. I reached down with shaking fingers and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up. One new video. Timestamp. 2 minutes ago. Title. Recording number 1. My stomach turned to ice. I tapped it open. The footage appeared instantly. Grainy, distorted, filmed from an angle directly behind me in the car. The video showed the back of my head. Me, sitting frozen. Me, afraid to breathe. And behind me, the shadow leaned forward, pressing into the space between the back of my seat and the rear cushion. Inch by inch, closer every second. The worst part wasn't how close it was. The worst part was that in the recording, the shadow's face began to come into view, slowly, like something blooming in darkness. A face shaped like mine, but wrong. The proportions were off, cheekbones too sharp, eyelids too thin, jaw slightly crooked like it had been assembled from pieces that didn't belong together. My features, rearranged by something that had observed humans but had never been one. And then, the recorded version of me, the same impossible double that spoke on recording number 0, appeared in the passenger seat of the video. He leaned toward the camera, his mouth curling into a slow, unnatural smile, and he whispered, "Turn around, Carter." I froze. The shadow in my back seat shifted again. The real world and the video aligned. The timing perfect. The creature behind me was waiting for me to obey. I didn't turn. Instead, with a sudden surge of adrenaline, I threw the door open and rolled out of the car onto the concrete. My elbow smashed against the ground, pain shot up my arm, but I didn't stop. I scrambled to my feet and backed away from the car, expecting the door to open, expecting the shadow to spill out. Nothing happened. The car sat silent, still. The back seat didn't move. The shadow inside didn't follow. I stared for what felt like an hour, waiting for a hand, or something shaped like a hand, to press against the window. But nothing came out. The shadow stayed inside the car. almost like a trapped animal, almost like it couldn't leave. My breath steadied just enough to let me think. If it couldn't leave the car, if it was bound to the recording, if it needed me to turn around, maybe it had rules. Maybe this thing wasn't fully free. Not yet. Still shaking, I backed away farther and faster until I reached the front door of the diner. Locked. No employees inside. Lights off. I cupped my hands around the glass and leaned in. Empty. I needed somewhere open, somewhere public, somewhere bright and full of noise and normal people doing normal things. But the moment I stepped back from the door, my phone vibrated again. Another video. Recording number 2. Timestamp. Now. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I tapped it open. The footage was inside the diner, right behind me, filming my back through the glass. I spun. No one. Nothing. The glass was clear. The diner was empty. But in the recording, something was pressed up against the window, its face inches from mine. A face shaped like me, but darker, emptier, stretched wrong, eyes too wide, pupils too large, a smile too still. The reflection version of me, watching, waiting. And then the recorded version whispered, "You can't run from the walls." The screen went black. My entire body tensed, because he wasn't talking about the diner. He was talking about my walls, my house, the walls where the clicking came from, the walls where something had been living, watching, recording. I stumbled backward, nearly falling off the curb. My breath was ragged, my vision blurred at the edges. My house was where this started. My house was where it wanted me. But going back felt like suicide. I looked over at my car. The shadow still sat in the back seat, perfectly still, like a mannequin waiting for a cue. My phone buzzed again, and I nearly screamed. A text message from an unknown number. It said, "Come home." Then another, "We need part 3. My stomach flipped. Recording number 3. They were telling me exactly what came next, exactly where I needed to be, exactly what they wanted to record. I dropped the phone. It hit the pavement with a thud. My mind was spinning, fear twisting through every nerve. But beneath the panic was something else, something sharper. A small, growing ember of anger. Why me? Why my house? Why my face? The diner was still closed. There were no cars coming, no pedestrians, no witnesses. Just me, alone with something that knew my every move. And I realized something awful. It didn't just film me. It predicted me. Every tape, every angle, every recording was one step ahead. This wasn't surveillance. This was orchestration. I drew in a shaky breath, grabbed my phone off the ground, and stared at the last message again. "We need part 3. I swallowed hard. Part 3 of what? The tapes? The recordings? My life? No, I wasn't going home. Not yet. They wanted me home. They needed me home. That meant going home was exactly what would make things worse, which meant the safest place right now might actually be anywhere but home. But I didn't get the chance to decide, because as I turned toward the street, intent on running, screaming, sprinting into whoever I could find, I saw something that froze my blood. Across the road, standing perfectly still on the sidewalk, was a man. A man wearing my clothes, my posture, my height, my everything. But he wasn't a shadow. He wasn't blurry. He wasn't hidden. He was solid. fully formed, real. He was me. And he lifted a VHS tape in one hand and pointed at me with the other, slowly, deliberately, his face twisting into the same smile I saw on the recordings. Then he mouthed one silent word. "Ready?" Before I could react, before I could run, before I could even scream, the car behind me unlocked itself. Click. The back door opened, slowly, invitingly, like a mouth. I spun, but the shadow was gone. The back seat was empty. And the man across the street, the solid version of me, began walking toward me with purpose. A hunter closing in. A recording coming to life. A copy replacing the original. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, brain screaming at me to run, to hide, to fight, anything. But before I could choose, my phone vibrated one more time. A new message. Just 2 words. Look up. I did. And above the diner roof, barely visible against the pale morning sky, was a camera lens pointed straight at me. Recording. Always recording. The camera above the diner roof didn't move. It didn't zoom. It didn't track me. It simply pointed down at the parking lot with a cold, unblinking stare. Like it had always been there, and I was only noticing now. I staggered backward, every instinct in me screaming to look for a ladder, a worker, anyone who could have placed it there. But there was no one. No tools, no wires. Just a lens protruding from the roof like an insect's eye, framed by the pale morning sky. Recording me. Waiting. And something in that stillness, something in the way the lens reflected the sunrise told me it wasn't a normal camera. It wasn't human-built. It wasn't mechanical. It was simply aware. On the sidewalk across the street, the man who wore my face, my perfect double, kept walking toward me. Not rushed, not slow, just steady, determined, unstoppable. I backed toward my car, terrified of the empty back seat, terrified of the open door, terrified of the world that suddenly felt paper thin between me and whatever lived behind it. My double lifted the VHS tape in his hand and tapped it twice against his leg, as if to say, "Your turn." "No," I whispered, barely able to breathe. No. He crossed the street without looking for cars. None passed. None existed. It was like the world itself froze for this exact moment, like everything else was silenced, so the only thing I could hear was my heartbeat and the crunch of gravel under his shoes. I ran. Not toward the car, not toward the diner. I ran toward the alley beside the building, my shoes slapping the pavement, my breath slicing my lungs. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a fire escape, a delivery worker, anything. All I knew was that I had to get away from him, away from the camera, away from the message telling me to look up. My phone buzzed in my hand. I froze. A new video. Recording number 3. No timestamp. Just play me. "No," I whispered. "No, I'm not doing this." The notification disappeared, and another immediately took its place. "Play us, or we come in." My chest seized. Come in where? Come in how? There was no inside here, just an alley, open to the sky. Then I realized, they didn't mean this alley. They meant my house, my walls. The walls that stirred, the walls that clicked, the walls where something had been watching me for who knows how long. If I didn't play the recording, they'd go deeper. They'd open the walls wider. They'd come out. I didn't have a choice. With shaking fingers, I tapped the video. The screen went black. Then an image emerged, grainy, low light, familiar. My living room. But not as it was when I left it. The furniture had been rearranged. The photos on the wall had been turned face down. The lights flickered on and off in a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. And on the couch, my couch, sat me. Or what looked like me, but this time, the angles were perfect, the lighting right, the movement natural. This double wasn't made of shadows or distortions. It was me. It was perfect. Down to the smallest detail, the scar on my knuckle, the tiny freckle near my right eyebrow, the way my left foot always twitched when I was stressed. The recorded me sat with elbows on knees staring into the camera like he'd been waiting for me to press play. And then he spoke. "Stop running." My breath hitched. The recorded me leaned forward slightly. "Come home." I shook my head, stepping backward in the alley. "No, I'm not. We're not trying to hurt you." I stopped. The recorded version of me smiled. Not warmly, not cruelly, just knowingly. "We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to replace you." My stomach dropped to the ground. The recording continued.
There has to be one of us. Only one. A host. A face to wear. A life to step into. A life to record. A life to... The voice distorted. The image glitched. Something flickered behind the recorded me. Something crawling through the wall, slipping through the drywall like it was water. My double didn't react. He just kept smiling. To continue. I nearly dropped the phone. When the footage cut, it didn't go black. It switched to another angle. Another room. My bedroom. But this time, the recording wasn't old. It wasn't from the past. It wasn't from some unknown night when they watched me sleep. It was happening right now. The sheets were still tangled from when I fled the house. Light streamed through the curtains just like it did here in the alley. The door to the room was cracked open, and through that crack, something moved. Something pale. Something with fingers that were too long, too thin, jointed wrong. Fingers dragging along the wall, feeling their way forward like a blind animal searching for prey. The hand slid into view, followed by an arm, followed by a face. My face, but stretched, distorted, skin like wet plaster, eyes like black holes, a mouth that opened too wide as the jaw unhinged in a silent scream. The thing stepped fully into the room. It turned toward the camera and whispered, "We're almost ready." I dropped the phone. It clattered against the alley pavement. I backed against the brick wall, heart pounding so hard it hurt, breath coming out in shreds. Footsteps entered the alley. Human footsteps. I snapped my head up. It was my double. The real solid one. The one from the sidewalk. He walked into the alley with calm, steady steps, not rushing, not threatening, just approaching me, like a mirror that had stepped out of its frame. I tried to run past him. He stepped in front of me. I tried to shove him. He didn't move. He wasn't stronger than me.
He wasn't heavier. He simply didn't give. Like pushing a mannequin bolted to the ground. "Why me?" I gasped, voice breaking. He tilted his head the exact way the shadow in the car had. "You were chosen." "Why?" "Because you hear the walls." My blood turned to ice. He stepped closer, and I pressed myself tighter against the bricks, wishing I could disappear into them the way they did. "You pretended you didn't," he said softly. "You blamed the house, the pipes, the wind." He leaned in until his forehead almost touched mine. "But you heard us." A cold realization washed through me. He wasn't talking about the tapes. He wasn't talking about the recordings. He was talking about the nights before anything happened. The nights when I thought I heard lost noises, murmurs, breaths, clicks in the walls that I dismissed as imagination. "We only come to those who listen," he whispered.
I shook my head violently. "I don't want this." "You don't have to want it," he smiled. "You just have to watch." He raised the VHS tape in his hand, the one he'd been holding the whole time. He pressed it against my chest. "Recording number 4, he said softly. I blinked. 4? Yes. His smile grew, stretching too wide. 0 for the first. 1 for the car. 2 for the diner. 3 for the house. He leaned in, voice almost tender. 4 for the moment we take you. My pulse spiked. Fight or flight, and I chose flight. I ducked under his arm and sprinted deeper into the alley. He didn't chase me. He didn't even turn. Because he didn't have to. The far end of the alley, the exit, was blocked. Not by a wall, not by dumpsters, but by me. Another version, another double. Standing perfectly still, hands at his sides, eyes unblinking. Behind him, in the shadow of the brick buildings, more figures stepped forward. All of them me. All of them smiling. Some distorted, some perfect, some half-formed, glitched faces frozen between frames. And then, from the walls around me, click, 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 soft, rhythmic, mechanical, cameras, opening, watching, recording. The bricks themselves bulged, as if something pressed against them from the other side. Shapes shifted beneath the surface, fingers, hands, faces pressing forward like wet clay. The wall behind me trembled. I turned. Too late. Cold fingers burst through the brick, wrapping around my shoulders, my arms, my neck. Hands pulled, dragged, pulled me into the wall as if the stone were liquid. I screamed, I clawed, I kicked, but the wall swallowed me deeper, the sound of cameras multiplying all around me. Through the narrowing sliver of light, I saw my doubles watching silently as I was dragged inside. One of them stepped forward, my perfect copy, the one from the sidewalk, and picked up my phone. He looked at me one last time and whispered, "We have what we need." Then the wall sealed shut. Darkness, cold, clicking, recording. Something whispered inches from my ear, voice wet and wrong. welcome home. Then a flash, a lens, and the world snapped. When the recording was later found, labeled recording number 4, it showed a man who looked exactly like me, unlocking my front door, walking inside, and settling comfortably into my life. Not screaming, not resisting, not speaking, but smiling. Always smiling. And from somewhere inside the walls, the clicking continued forever.